Ladies and gentlemen, I've been tracking an account that's been slowly making its way up on the Korean server ever since Dopa's release from the military. 74% win rate, 120 wins, 40 losses. Oriana, Twisted Fate, we got Lulu, Cassidin, Victor, Vigar. You know who I think this is. People have been telling me, Drew, it's Dopa's secret account. Drew, it's Dopa. I mean, it sure as hell looks like Dopa. I don't know who else could climb to this rank with this win rate other than him. But nobody can decipher if it's Dopa better than I. Of course, Dopa is not allowed to stream on the Korean server, has a 1,000-year ban. He plays in China, challenger on the super server, but he normally keeps his Korean climbs pretty close to his chest. And I'm probably the closest out of anybody to his chest. So let's jump onto the rift, break down the gameplay of this player, determine whether it's Faker, and determine whether this guy is going to be able to reach rank 1 on the Korean server for possibly the last time of his career. And quickly guys, happy Mother's Day to all who celebrate. If you do enjoy mothers, especially single ones, I'd really appreciate if you come across and subscribe to the channel, put notifications on, leave a like, it helps the video out, and it's going to be showing a lot of support to all those beautiful mummies out there. Jumping onto the rift now, we've got Dopa's Twisted Fate into a Katarina. Ignite. Now the rune page is Electrocute with Celerity and Scorch. I watched Dopa stream 2 days ago with Twisted Fate because he never used to run this rune setup, and on his Chinese account, he ran the exact same setup. It's not the most common Twisted Fate setup, I'm not gonna lie. Normally, secondaries, you're going Resolve Tree. The Celerity is a weird one, which means you're most likely going for movement speed early, which makes sense in a Katarina who you're trying to navigate around her daggers. The biggest thing for me is going to be the movements, card selection, ward placings, side lane control, team fight, flash control. I'm usually a pretty good judge of Dopa's gameplay. I've studied thousands of hours of in-game and out. Good card hover. Gonna get the Electrocute proc with the E. Utilizing the movement speed and the spacing. 80% win rate to Korean Grandmaster is crazy, by the way. There's only a few solo queue players who are able to do this. Myself is not included in any of them. Now, when I versed Dopa, and I won't spoil the result, but when I versed Dopa, the control he had in the lane around my cooldowns was probably the biggest thing. He just seems to have this insane tempo where he knows your exact cooldowns, and he's able to utilize that to get his card rotation to zone CS. And just spanking this Katarina in the early game. I'm not sure if he's missed a CS yet. Comes through. Warden, yes. Great ward placement. Beautiful. We don't really do the chicken wards anymore, by the way. Faker still does it sometimes, but warding up over here early on junglers who just rush the wraiths or the chickens, like, it doesn't really provide you much info anymore. If you're able to get the ward on the second or third wave onto a jungle entrance... Now, does he pull this wave, or does he go for the hard shove? The key to Katarina is just wave management, right? You can't allow Kat to just permanently shove waves and get moves as... Pops a potion. Does he flash for this kill? He could flash. I'm not gonna lie, it's looking like it's him. 87% of Twisted Fates flash there for the kill. Now, he does run Crime Twisted Fate on his Chinese account. But that account, of course, has unlimited RP. And Dopa is quite known to be stingy. Maybe this account only has the High Noon as Katarina sacks the wave and looks for the roam. This account, of course, linking up with the timings as well of when he ends his stream in China. He plays a few games. He dodges as well. I've been tracking how he dodges, as in he dodges games. And he dodges at least a game or two a session, normally. Which Dopa always does on his Korean climbs. If he doesn't like a team comp, if he gets auto-filled into a position he doesn't like, he dodges and waits to play the next day, which this account is doing. So everything is ticking. boxes, but I have been known to have a few doper impersonators over my life, trying to make me fall for him. Does miss the cannon. Tried to last hit it. Wants this wave, and it's going to try and look for a really late base.
Invented
Katarina
narrative
going for
video
AD.
games, saved Konami, saved Resident Evil, changed stealth games, changed horror games, united Hollywood and video games, predicted 2020, predicted the dead internet, predicted mainstream media, created the Strand-type genre, scans feet like there's no tomorrow, and many more. The most important figure in video game history, a god among mortals. It is crazy to think that all of that has happened. They say Resident Evil. I don't know. I have no idea. But at least some of those I think are kind of true. It's kind of funny, though. Invented narrative video games, saved Konami, saved Resident Evil, changed stealth games, changed horror games, united Hollywood and video games, predicted 2020, predicted the dead internet, predicted mainstream media, created. So we had a pretty interesting thing happen. This entire event has massively popped off. So Stop Killing Games has reached 1 million signatures.
Okay, this one's going to be fun. So, the Stop Killing Games initiative is almost over, and the last time we covered it, the European Citizens Initiative, which is the part of it that matters the most, had just opened. As of right now, you've got just days to join it, meaning that this is your last chance to make your voice heard and hopefully prevent the games that you buy from being destroyed.
That's right.
But here's the thing. Until last week, it really did seem to be rather doomed.
Yeah.
They needed hundreds
People
and
lost
hundreds
interest.
and hundreds, over 500,000 more signatures. But, well, right now, it's gaining thousands an hour. The reason why is quite funny. So
It crossed 1 million. They have reached the goal, and they are even going beyond that even farther. What is it at right now?
Happened. They needed to hit 1 million signatures, but after months of stalling, they only had 450k. But then, over the horizon, a savior came.
They're past 1.1. They're
Savior
1.13.
is Pirate Software. And that's because his opposition, plus a few pinches of World of Warcraft, sparked a drama that is now surging signatures to the tune of over 240,000 in just 7 days. So,
that's right.
Time to get you up to speed. It all began last year when the darlings at Ubisoft shut down the crew. Now, they didn't just shut down the online features, they shut down everything.
The game. Yeah, you can even play it.
Turns out, even the single player required the online component. That basically meant that your copy of the crew was, no longer a thing that you could really do anything with.
Yep.
So, Ross Scott from Accursed Farms was not a fan of this, so he started a movement. Now, you may know Ross from things like Freeman's Mind or Dead Game News, and his plan, right, was to use the law.
Ross has been an advocate for gamer rights and other types of consumer protections for electronic media for a long period of time. This isn't, it's not like this is his first rodeo and it's his first time talking about this. He's been an advocate for this for quite a while.
Not change.org to actually change things here. And it certainly seems that now, a year on, he actually may succeed in a way. So basically, right, Ross believes that consumers bought a product with games like The Crew, and that product was then taken away. But from Ubisoft's perspective, it's rather different. They argue that they sold a license to a live service, a service that they could simply end whenever they wanted. So put simply, what this movement aims to do is to address this gray area so that at the very least, people would get...
I don't think that companies should be allowed to repackage sales as licenses rather than products in order to just take consumer rights away from the user. I think that's bullshit. How does that help anybody? How is that in any way in the benefit of the actual customer or the population? Yeah, it's not right. Yeah, it's bullshit.
Formal clarity on what they were actually buying. Best case scenario would involve something basically with more teeth. Now, this was all multi-pronged. There was a UK campaign that hit problems early on with the government claiming that existing laws already cover the issue. As for the US, well, basically, it was never an option because of already settled law. Now, because of this, stuff looked grim. But last summer, another path opened, and that path was the EU Citizens Initiative. So, this lets EU citizens propose legislative agendas, and this proposal was very simple. stop destroying video games. And what it would require certainly does sound simple. It's that any game sold in the future would have to prepare for the eventuality or the possibility of server shutdowns, that they would need to remain in a functional playable state. Now, this could be through, say, single-player access, maybe through peer-
Or they got to give people their money back. Like, I think that if you revoke service from somebody and you take somebody's service away, you have to give them their money back. Like, you can take them off of your official servers, maybe, but, like, to just take their entire account back, because, like, again, it's just not fair. There's not really a balance of power between, like, the user or a, what do you call it? The user and the seller.
Peer connections,
it's completely distorted.
Server stuff. You get the point, right? But actually, what's key right now is that at this point, the implementation details are actually not required. The way this works is that if it is successful, the EU will then have 6 months to respond, and if they say yes, then they will adopt a resolution, and that would guide EU activity.
This at least moves things in that direction.
Mean a whole bunch of new super hasty laws, but make no mistake, it would actually matter. And that's because EU policy...
It would get the ball rolling. It would not just like immediately, oh, we get the petition to 1 million signatures and then everything solves itself. No, it will take time for this to happen, but it at least begins that timeline. It starts the timeline.
Has got global impact. I mean, it's pretty obvious now. Just look at Apple
As
and
a
Google.
dev, I disagree with this. This all falls flat on intellectual property. I understand that, and I know that a lot of developers feel that way, but the way that you imagine intellectual property, I don't think is in the best interest of the customer. And I think that if you have a business transaction that's fundamentally not in the best interest of the customer, and it's predatory, problematic, or unfair in nature, then I think the government needs to come in and regulate it to make sure that the customer is being represented and treated in a fair way. So I understand that, basically, I don't agree with the current, I think, intellectual property law and the amount of ways that a person can exercise intellectual property law right now. I think that it's too overreaching. It's way too overreaching, and it's not fair for an average person.
For one example. Now, for this, all that's needed is...
Or just don't buy it? No, I don't agree with that at all. I think that whenever, and the problem is that just don't buy it doesn't work when every other company inside of a market does the same thing and adopts the same principle. So that's called a cartel, right? Like you have price fixing and all of these other things that are against the law. Like, just stop buying something is nice to say, sure, but you're not existing. Like, there's a lot of people that have an illusion of a free market, but most markets are actually not very free at all. Just don't buy it. And also, by the way, just don't sell it. Like, if you can say just don't buy it as like a throwaway line, then I feel like I could say just don't sell it as a throwaway line too, right? Well, if you don't like the law, then don't make a game like that. So,
1 million
you're at an impasse there.
B, a minimum threshold being passed in at least 7 EU countries, which basically just exists. So, I don't know. If the French all get together and want something that nobody else wants and only one country passes, then, hey, the EU's safe. Anyway, you get the point. That is the challenge. Those are the stakes. So here's what happened next. Going through the requirements, the regional thresholds do seem to be quite manageable, right?
Yeah.
Now, the 1 million signatures is
That's
quite a lot. I mean, a
and
hell
it
of
happened.
a lot. And
And
success
it
there would
fucking
require
happened.
a
That's what's
multilingual
crazy.
international campaign, one that's actually centered on EU citizens. Who was leading it? Well, an English-speaking YouTuber with a cult following, which...
Asman loves authoritarianism, as you were saying earlier. You see, you view it as authoritarianism. I view it as freedom from authoritarianism. Because, in my opinion, authoritarianism, what makes authoritarianism so scary is whenever it's tyrannical without the ability for the public to be able to have a recourse against it. So, for example, if you don't like the president or you don't like a representative in your country, or at least in the United States, you can vote to have that person removed. But the problem is that whenever you're having this with a company, you can't necessarily vote to have a company be removed. And when a company establishes a monopoly in a certain market, like, for example, Visa and MasterCard do in terms of payment processors, and then they apply their laws and their rules arbitrarily, or like the recent case with Epic and Fortnite and selling on the Apple Play Store, I think that you run into a big issue of authoritarianism with no accountability. Because authoritarianism is being exercised right now, but the people that have the authority are not accountable to the public. And that's what the real problem is. So the actual argument that I'm making here is not in favor of authoritarianism. It's actually against it. Because I want authoritarianism that is accountable to the public rather than authoritarianism that's accountable to shareholders.
I mean in a positive way, just so I'm being clear. But basically, it's not a huge number of people. Now, this story obviously did cut through. Loads of people covered it, us included, and the early momentum was really strong.
Yeah.
Until it wasn't. Now, this is because some things fell through. One being...
That's just the end goal of capitalism. Why are you discovering this now? Capitalism is one of the greatest things, and it's the best social and economic system in the entire world. And every country that doesn't adopt capitalism is a awful third world shithole that you would never want to live in. And even countries like China are adopting capitalism in multiple other ways, and you are naive to think otherwise. Capitalism has brought an untold and unfathomable amount of wealth to the entire world, and it is the premise of the entire identity of Western civilization. So if you don't like capitalism, go move to a shithole without it. But you won't, because you know capitalism is a good thing. As with anything, if you drink too much water, you'll drown. Is water bad? No, it's not. Anything can be overdone.
Newsletter that was tanked by that company having layoffs. Even Heineken, yes, Heineken, the beer people, wanted to include the campaign in their marketing, but only after the petition ended. But there is another one, and I think I know it's the one you want me to talk about.
Yes,
the pirate.
Oh.
Okay. TLDR, Pirate Software opposed the initiative. This is back when it all kicked off. So what I'll do here is boil down what I essentially think is the best case, or like the best faith version of his argument, which is essentially that in very many cases, over-regulation often actually helps the incumbents. In this case, would help the AAA companies. The reason
this is true. That wasn't the argument I think Pirate Software was making, but it's true that oftentimes a lot of companies that are very big argue and advocate for higher degrees of regulation that have additional costs in order to pull the ladder up to make it difficult to have emerging companies make it into the market. This is very common.
That they would
it's like, for example, like think of it in like in World of Warcraft, whenever you get to item level like 600 and then you make it to where after that the only people that can join your raid are also item level 600. Well, that's what happens basically.
The only companies with the resources to actually overcome the regulations. That is actually a fair enough, reasonable argument. But I think in practice, it's fair to say that Pirate Software, in his 2 videos, was not really steel manning his opposition. There were some errors. Wasn't really a great situation. But really in this story, there's a key thing to remember. The initial, I'll say drama, let's just say hot public disagreement, that was where it happened when, let's just say, his internet stocks were in a slightly different and altogether more healthy place.
It did.
Since then, he was involved in a major World of Warcraft drama, which I will cover shortly. I don't like doing drama.
It's crazy how bad that drama affected him. It is actually insane. I don't think that I can, like, I don't know the last time that somebody had video game drama negatively affect them that much.
But in this case, it does actually inform how the news would play out. As for the initiative, well, by the following April, signatures were just sitting at 425k. That's not even halfway. And only 25,000 signatures had been added between April and last week. So it basically was dead in the water. Momentum from the previous summer had completely fizzled out. But then, with only weeks to go, Scott posted his video. Everything changed. The end of Stop Killing Games. It's a fairly dramatic, somber title for a video, and one that is fair. It absolutely did appear to be dead. It was a final plea and an explainer made by a very, very tired-looking man. It was clear to me that the campaign had taken its toll. Scott admitted as much. One choice quote, It's like asking someone with severe dyslexia to write a book report on War and Peace. I am the wrong person for that job.
Yep.
I think that does speak to the absolutely mammoth amount of work that doing anything like this would actually require. But it's not all that Scott said. He took aim at Pirate and he explained point by point, right, how Pirate's coverage was, in his view, not at all a fair representation of the overall initiative, its goals, its specific language, and I would say from my read of it, I think Pirate almost immediately jumped straight to some worst case outcomes of a maximalist version of the campaign.
Sure.
Of course, we can add to that an interpersonal level to all of this, you know, the usual emotional reactions, hot words. But if it was just that, if it was only that, well, what happened would not really be what has happened. So let's talk about World of Warcraft.
It's actually crazy that this was all because of a WoW guild. This was nuts. Oh my fucking god.
As I said, I hate covering drama, but today it is actually relevant because basically
it all comes back to WoW.
I think what we're seeing with this initiative would not really have played out if these World of Warcraft related events didn't play out the way that they did. Because basically, this is why people...
That is what happened, is that as soon as the WoW event happened and people got really mad at him, then it got really popular to make negative content about him. Then people went back and they brought up like that Maldavius fig tree stuff. And then they brought up him doing those playthroughs and people thinking that it was inauthentic. And then they brought up what else besides that? Oh, the voice changer thing. And I think there was like a couple of other things. Yeah, Ashes of Creation where he pulled that mob and Ashes of Creation. Like a lot of stuff, right? So it kind of, it was like a domino, basically. It was topic after topic. Yeah, exactly. People went crazy, crazy, crazy about it. As soon as people realize that you can get positive feedback on social media by being negative about a person or a topic, it creates a feedback loop that multiplies that amount of negative feedback or negative sentiment by like 50x. Because people want social media attention, and so they go after it by adopting these causes and saying these things. Whereas in a lot of cases, if this was happening in a private situation, you know, any of these dramas, like, you know, even like the big ones, would probably not be taken very seriously on an interpersonal level. But on the internet, they're taken extremely seriously because there is clout to be gained. And this is not something that's unique to Pirate software. It's it's a phenomenon that happens on the internet. And it's happened to me multiple times too. So I've seen it happen. I've been on the I have farmed other people for this, and I have been farmed for this. Sometimes you're the farmer, other times you're the crop. That's the way it goes. It's a rough and tumble world out there, and if you can't stand the heat, get out of the kitchen. That's the way I see it.
Ready, willing, and even excited to hop back into the fray and to pump all of this up. So here's the TLDR. OnlyFanked is a WoW Classic hardcore streamer content guild. That's a lot of words, but basically think of it as a reality TV show where dozens to hundreds of hours of gameplay are at stake because when a character dies...
It's like Love Island, where instead of everybody having sex, nobody does.
It is dead, just that that character has got lots of fans in Twitch chat and some sort of big name behind them in the form of the streamer. Pirate, along with other streamers, were doing a dungeon in this game. And that dungeon went poorly. People died, and of course, whenever they died, that means they lose their characters that they progressed. Now you might be thinking, so what? A World of Warcraft dungeon run went bad and people lost their characters in a hardcore server. Why is that a news story? Well, there absolutely is a reason why. So it was broadly seen that he went very much every man for himself mode, trying to save his own character and really to the detriment of his teammates, a few of whom died. Now at the time tensions were high, and those tensions were pointed at Pirate software, both from viewers and from his fellow party members.
Yeah, Chance kicked Pirate out of the guild. Large majority of the guild felt uncomfortable doing it. It put Chance in a pretty weird position. I mean, as I said, after seeing this happen, and in my opinion, I think that like, I could tell that OnlyFangs 2 was going sour, not when the Pirate stuff happened, but when the S-Fan stuff happened. There was like an entire hate community about S-Fan dying in Classic WoW. Like, you can just search this up on Reddit, but there was a huge community that was dedicated around shitting on him and hating on S-Fan. The what? Yeah, it was really, really cringe, right? And like, oh, S-Fan's bad. He doesn't know what he's doing, right? And it's like, I mean, it's a video game. Like, I can't really give a fuck about this, but it was funny. Well, it was funny, but the problem is that when you allow that type of hostility into a community, that hostility manifests in different ways. It's not like it's only going to apply in one circumstance. It will then apply on other people. They hated on everyone, bro. They did, but S-Fan was one of the prime targets for it. Let's be fair. And so, but no, you're definitely right. And so, like, after it happened to S-Fan, what happened to Pirate Software made a lot more sense. It'll grow and spread, yeah.
And what followed was, I think, to put a very messy thing in simple terms, in an emotional sense, the opposite of saying, shit, my bad, I'm sorry, I absolutely could have done more there, my bad. Basically owning the L, doing so in public, and doing so in a way that feels authentic. Of course, feels authentic because it actually is authentic. So if you ask me, what actually happened is a common downfall of very smart, very rational people. That's because very smart, very rational people can rationalize how they are very, very right and others are very, very wrong. And from
I think Belluor is very accurate about this, and this is something that I've learned before myself, is that like I don't really understand why people get emotional. I'm not an emotional person, and because I'm not an emotional person, when people react emotionally, I don't really know how to approach it or how to react to it, because it's like putting water on a computer. It just like short circuits my brain. I'm like, what's wrong with you? Like, why are you thinking like this? Why can't you just think about this normally? How many people have been accused of being Zionists because they think that Ethan Klein has a reasonable claim to against fair use for Denim's, Frogan, and Caseytron? And they're being called Zionists, that they like Ethan Klein, they're Nazis, and all of this other stuff. It's totally illogical. And what I've learned is that people are just simply not logical. The strongest argument isn't an argument. And because of that, people like Pirate Software fall into the trap of trying to logically reason with people that do not want to be reasoned with. Yeah, you're wrong. You can, but they have to be open for the conversation to change. I'm talking about in a general sense, not in an individual sense. In a lot of cases, on an individual personal level, you can change people's minds. But once people get together in groups, it's like the Men in Black quote, "A person's smart, but people are stupid." I think that the more people and the more momentum a mindset has, the more one-dimensional it becomes, because it has to cater to that increasingly lower common denominator. So yeah, no, I could talk about this a lot, because it's group psychology, basically. And I think that Belluor, the reason why is I really think Belluor had a great insight with this. And it's something I've never heard discussed before. It's that when you try to apply logic to some situations, many people are just simply unwilling to hear it, even if you, and this is what happens to me, even if you can prove, like I had this happen with my mom, for example. Like I would tell my mom whenever I was like 8 and 9 years old, I said, "Why are you smoking cigarettes? Cigarettes are going to kill you. It says cigarettes kill you. You know cigarettes are going to kill you. They're expensive and they're killing you. Why would you want to kill yourself?" And she just kept smoking cigarettes, and I could just never understand that. It never made sense to me. Why would you do this? And it transcended all rationality in my mind. I still, even to this day, I can't understand it. And so it's hard to stop. Well, it's hard to do a lot of things. It doesn't mean you just shouldn't do it, right? And so that's right. It's not a choice. Well, there's plenty of people that choose to stop smoking. Many people choose to stop smoking. They do it every day. But she just wasn't one of them. And so anyway, I just couldn't understand it. And that was probably the first time that I came into conflict with this.
other people think and to not have a holistic view of a situation. I mean, to put it in very simple terms, people thought he came off really defensive. And what all of this meant was fuel for the fire, an abundance of fuel. And I've got to imagine that from Pirate's point of view, it really must have looked like the entire world was against him.
Well, they were.
Per the dynamics of Twitch, it was an incredible content event. And the reality is that once people are against you, it's very hard to change minds. Especially when, as I think Pirate was, you're feeling...
Somebody says, remember you saying anything, best way I could explain it to you as a non-smoker, cigarettes or a smoker, what soda is to you? Yeah, but my mom was a Catholic, and I remember I said to her, I was like 8 or 9 years old at this time. I said, if killing yourself makes you go to hell, then wouldn't you go to hell for doing something that's killing yourself? And she's like, yeah, I don't know. Killing yourself makes you go to hell, then wouldn't you go to hell for doing something that's killing yourself? And she's like, yeah. I said, if killing yourself makes you go to hell, then wouldn't you go to hell for doing something that's killing yourself? And she's like, yeah, I don't know. And like, I had thought this up and I was like, okay, this is going to convince her to stop doing it. Didn't work. That's a bad analogy. Well, I'm just saying, it's just using logic, but yeah. And addiction doesn't care. Yeah. It doesn't, people do not follow logic.
Quite defensive, and you're very much feeling the toll of thousands of angry people being very angry at you in just about every way they can. Meaning that, yeah, some people were, let's just say, going beyond having just a civil disagreement. Now, after that point,
I was also 8 or 9 years old, right?
There was a clip of an Ashes of Creation raid pool that sparked a bit of a drama. There were then accusations of pre-watching games in order to look better on stream. There was critique of his Blizzard credentials and a whole lot of different things. Basically, he turned into somewhat of a punching bag. Now, to, I suppose, try and work through some of this, he did a session with Dr. K. I think it was a pretty enlightening one. It certainly is, I'd say, a good listen. It essentially did get into why he reacted the way he did, the way that he actually felt. I'm not going to paraphrase here too much beyond just what I've already said. That's my takeaway. So I'd recommend, if you want more texture, more understanding of this story and the social dynamics that made it play out, give Dr.
Let's see here. I agree that the raid made the half game, but I think behind his stance on stop killing games is extremely biased. I think that people were unhappy about his stance because he came at it from the perspective of a developer, and most players don't care about a developer's perspective because they're not developers.
K's video a watch. But as it pertains to the Stop Killing Games movement, I think you can see how, well, whenever there was the initial disagreement of Ross, Pirate stocks were looking pretty good. But then he was involved in several major dramas. These dramas led to hundreds and hundreds of thousands, perhaps millions of people maybe finding out about him or having a changed opinion of him. There were a lot of videos talking about, you know, mistakes, examining everything. And that's why right now, before this video, when I just searched for Pirate software on YouTube, here's what I got. We've got the Pirate software unraveling featuring a game developer, 211k views. A Josh Strife Hayes reaction, 204k views. An Axeman video, 586k views. An Upper Echelon video, 266k views. One from Moist Critical, 3.1 million views. And that is just the top few search results. We're talking about millions of views here.
A lot of people.
While so many of these were rooted in the dramatic aspect, obviously they were related to Stop Killing Games, and they all painted Stop Killing Games in a positive light. And what that essentially meant is that now you didn't need to be a game preservation enthusiast to know that Stop Killing Games exists. All you needed was a path.
This is actually a very good insight from Belluer again. This is a great video that he made. He's saying that the hate on Pirate software that made him oppositional to Stop Killing Games made the initiative more accessible to more people. This is a very, very good insight.
Interest in one of the larger ongoing dramas.
I think he's right.
Of course, even if you didn't have that, social media algorithms do know how to find you if you could be interested in it. All of that means a humongous megaphone. And so far, it absolutely seems it's done the trick. We've went from almost certain failure at 454k signatures to, at the time of writing this video, 714k. And at the time of
now it's at 1.1 million.
Only a few hours later, 737k signatures. Now, that basically means that they need
less than a day
263K in about 30 days. And obviously, if this rate holds just a little bit longer, they'll absolutely make it. Or will they? Because here's the thing. They do actually need consistent, legitimate signatures.
Yep.
The reason why is fairly simple. Fake ones could be stripped out. Overexcited Americans having fun with a VPN, I don't know, could probably try to sign up for this. Wouldn't help the initiative. It would probably get scrubbed. And, well,
that was definitely
America,
not a good
you can't
thing.
sign an EU petition. So it's not a guaranteed thing just yet, but it certainly is looking like it's going to pass 1 million. Now, what happens if it succeeds is basically this. The EU Commission will consider further action. That could be legislative action, or it could just be guidance on existing consumer laws. Now, no matter what, the industry would have significant input, but regardless, we would get a formal statement on the matter and its legality. And that's actually a powerful starting point for future conversations and new laws.
Yeah.
But here's the thing, it gets even better. Because those conversations have already begun, and we've already started to make progress. Through all the noise and all the drama, the core problem is fairly simple.
This is a great thing.
That audiences often think they're buying a product when they buy a game, but in reality, they're actually buying licenses. Now, since October, Steam explicitly states that all purchases are licenses, that it's not ownership. And that was all.
I don't think that's enough. Just because you say something should be a certain way doesn't mean it is that way. I think that a customer should be entitled to certain things when they spend their money, and you shouldn't be able to just take it away from them because they signed some TOS. That's bullshit.
Case, it's just that now it's no longer hidden in their EULA. And Valve's timing was, let's just say, curious here. That's because California signed AB 2426, stating that any media that you can't permanently access offline must be labeled as a license, not a product. Now,
there it
side
is.
to this is companies
That's
seeing
a good start.
PR opportunities, and there's a beautiful irony. Ubisoft, yes, the very company that started this whole mess, is actually taking action. That's because they're testing offline modes for The Crew 2 and Motorfest. And I think it's fairly clear that the Stop Killing Games movement inspired this. So, you know what? In certain ways, it's
and I think there's also like a certain level of consumer advocacy that certain games and publishers will feel pressure to do this, even outside of the legal expectations. Like, now that companies are more afraid to do, a great example of this is like Web3 and NFT stuff. Like, nowadays, saying that you're going to make an NFT game or a Web3 game, this is like an immediate pass for, I would say, 98% of the internet. And so because there's such a negative sentiment around it, I think that it's created a feedback loop where companies are not making content that way.
Already winning. Now, another thing that could inspire this was an actual lawsuit, specifically a Californian one about the closure of The Crew. But that lawsuit is actually facing some problems right now, and that's because of a Final Fantasy XI related precedent that lets companies remove users from games because, well, as a user, all you've bought is a license, and that can be revoked. That's a ruling that obviously plays to Ubisoft's advantage in that lawsuit, but looking at the big picture, we actually do see the developers are choosing to address these issues.
I agree with companies being able to remove users from their own servers. Like, for example, like if you're on a multiplayer server and you're cheating, I think they should 100% be able to ban you. You think it's good to think like that? I do. I'm very much a big fan of that. I think it's a great thing. I think that every company should exist, at least not for the detriment of the population. I'm a big advocate for consumer rights and consumer protections.
And not because they're being forced to by the law, seemingly because they want to. But there are many reasons for that. It could be PR, or it could simply be because they see what way the wind is blowing. Here's something cool. Take a look at Super Move's World of Parkour. This is an indie game that failed. Legal obligations prevent keeping the online functions active, but existing owners can still play it in single player. There's another example. Whenever Blizzard Entertainment purchased Spellbreak's developer, they obviously stopped the game. But months later, they released a peer-to-peer version of the game on itch.io. That's awesome. And before all of this, Valen Studios ended Knockout City.
Yeah, there's no reason why they can't do this. Really, there's no reason why they can't do it. And also, by the way, we can just tell them to do it. You realize that, right? We can just say, you have to do this now. And if enough of us get together and we say, you have to do this now, then they have to do it. Because that's the way the government works.
They made sure that private servers still would work. This is
that simple.
3 indie teams finding a way to preserve their games retroactively. It is good shit. It matters. Now, yes, it is the case that player counts may be in the single digits, but it preserves gaming history. If a bunch of people want to play one of these games together, they actually can. And if Stop Killing Games passes, developers would have to consider things like this, not retroactively, but from day one. And that doesn't mean you can no longer make an MMO. You can still make Helldivers, but you'll need to sell your games correctly.
Like a peer-to-peer
You'll need to
or something
label
like that, yeah.
them as what they actually are. Are they products or are they licenses? And you'd need to provide some sort of exit plan whenever servers shut down.
Exactly.
And nobody is saying that retrofitting games for offline play is an easy thing. But I don't actually think that's a...
Just because something is complicated to do doesn't mean that you should just forego the consumer experience and then the consumer shouldn't be represented or treated in a way that's ethical or fair. I think that there's a lot of things about this that make it complex and difficult, but that doesn't really matter to me because what really matters is whether something like this is in the best interest of the player. There's a lot of things that are complex and difficult, and if you can't do it and you can't deliver that product to the market, then that's your weakness as a business. Like, not every business has the right to exist.
Reason not to try this, because in many ways the direction of travel has not been great in gaming. It's often not been great in consumer law, at least until recently. I think making progress in this realm is absolutely a good thing. And I think the idea, why not try? Well, I think that is the attitude that we need. Of course, as for some of the reasons why not, you've likely heard those from Pirate Software. I think most people are thinking that on balance, no, it's actually worth giving this a shot. I think the benefits to consumer awareness, consumer protections, and, well, game preservation are pretty damn good reason why we should actually try. So, it's up to you. My question is simple. Why not give it a try? You can find the thing linked down below.
It's a great initiative. It is. And if you're from the EU, you should sign it, even though it's past 1 million in case of fake signatures. I actually think this is one of Bellior's best videos. I think that's probably the reason why so many people watched it. He brought in a number of elements of insight into this that I think nobody else has really discussed. And I think that he talked about the psychology of how and why the resurgence happened in a extremely informed and intelligent way. This is one of his best videos. I'm going to link it to you guys.
If you want to see an example of consumers not being treated fantastically,
give it a like.
Capcom, you're being naughty and it's time to call you out. You can find out all about it in this next video.
There's the video right there. I genuinely, reason why signing a petition is actually a bad idea, and it may lead to Pirate Software saying, I told you so. In case it doesn't go well. Well, no, I mean, like, then people are just going to push for it in general, right? A weird conspiracy I just saw of what if Pirate said all that to bring attention to the movement and have it succeed? I don't think that's why he did it. I don't think so at all. But, you know, either way, it created that effect, and I think that having a face for people to go against definitely helped a lot of people advocate for it and go after it. That's 100% true. And what is this here? What do you think is really going to happen, though? Will these companies truly cave? I think that you guys have a very, very pessimistic view on how easy it is to make companies do what you want whenever the government just tells them to do something. The fact is that the government has the army, the government has the guns, the government has all of the power. If they tell a company to jump, the company says how high. That's it. And if they don't say how high, then they do what they do to that guy from Telegram. They just put the motherfucker in jail. And then the next person does it. That's it. It's that simple. It's so fucking easy. They have to follow the law, and if you don't, they shut you down. That's the way it is. Apple cable is the best example. Yeah, Apple wanted to make their own charger cable, and then they said, no, you have to just use a basic USB-C cable. And you know what they did? They did a USB-C cable. It's literally that simple. You can make them do whatever you want. You can. You all you need to do is get enough people together, and then you apply the law to them. That's it. And it's that simple. Or the company moves to a different country. It doesn't matter, because even if the company moves to a different country, if it's doing business in your country, then they're still like, I mean, then the company can get blocked. They can extradite people. There are a million ways that governments can find like opportunities to negatively affect one of these companies. And so don't ever think that this is beyond any level of accountability. None of these companies are, and they could easily do it as much as they want. Someone tell that to Nintendo? We could easily do that. And also, by the way, Nintendo is facing an issue with that right now. So they're facing a lawsuit right now over the ability to disable Switch 2 consoles in Brazil. Like, I don't think, like, even in Brazil, they can still hold Nintendo accountable. Yeah, and also, the more companies do that, then the more, like, let's say, like, one country has this law. Okay, well, let's say Brazil. Brazil is a huge market, but it's not the size of the United States or the European Union, right? Or China. So let's say this happens and it's against the law in Brazil, but the company continues doing this stuff. That's totally fine. But the difference is that when more and more countries make it against the law, then that business model becomes increasingly less viable, because you're looking at your target audience and it's becoming more and more and more narrow. You see kind of how that happens? The chances are the others will follow. Yeah, and once enough countries make something against the law, it becomes the default for international trade. That's what happens. And I think it primarily is decided by two different groups of people, right? And it's primarily decided by the United States, China, and the European Union, and the UK. Those are the prime, main, big money groups in society. And if you're not making money inside of that, you've got some problems. I'm happy Nintendo's getting sued, especially for this. They are. And also keep in mind that we could do this to them in the United States too. The European Union could do this to Nintendo too. There is no limit of what you can do. If you get enough people together, you can do anything you want. Hassan's mad at Legal Mindset because Legal Mindset, I guess, made a video about Hassan.
Dude, there's something so funny about people being like, dog, have you seen the Legal Mindset video about you? Dude, if I were to cover every Rumble video, so funny about people being like, dog, have you seen the Legal Mindset video about you? Dude, if I were to cover every Rumble lawyer, fake lawyer that actually is like a fucking right-wing freak that spends most of their time talking about like trans people, I would lose my mind. I would have no time to cover anything else. I get it. A lot of you are drama perverts, okay? And you nut.
Is he back to the I'm above drama thing again? Is he doing this again? He is. Oh, Jesus. Okay, right.
When you think about the prospect of drama, but I'm not going to pay any mind or any attention to some fucking psychotic MAGA lawyer, not a real lawyer, but a passport bro, who offers fucking courses.
He didn't say he was a lawyer. He said he was. Did he say he was a lawyer?
On becoming a passport bro, who primarily fucking streams on Rumble. Why?
I don't see how Hassan can criticize someone from being a passport bro whenever you went to brothels overseas. I think that's a bit of a double standard. That's just me. But to me, that seems like a double standard.
Why do you guys come in here and ask for this stuff? It's never going to happen. Okay? It's never happening.
Is this it?
We're talking about Le Boobies, 24 karat gold Le Boobies. Dude, you got to watch the Sigma Grindset lawyer's fucking video on you. Okay. I'm good, man. Thanks.
Carat gold Le Boobie.
I don't know what to say. I don't know what to say. So he wasn't happy about the video. Okay. Well, let's go ahead and watch it. We'll see if there's a reason to be unhappy about it, okay? I haven't seen this. Apparently, it came out earlier today, and we will take a look at it. So this is Legal Mindset. He recently hit apparently 300,000 subscribers, and he released a video, and it's called Twitch Has a Hassan Problem. Okay, let's take a look at it. Let's watch it. Here we go. And also, by the way, of course Hassan isn't going to watch a video of people calling into action the fact that he pulled out what could have been considered as a firearm. Whether you think that it's a real gun or not, apparently people said it was an airsoft gun. Go rob a store, go rob a bank with an airsoft gun. You're going to get charged as if it was a real gun. I don't think it really matters, but, you know, of course he's not going to watch that.
Twitch has a brand new Hassan problem, and this one could have...
So he's not introducing himself as a lawyer, right? He's just talking about legality? Because I was just curious, like, if that was what was going to happen.
Huge repercussions, both legal and non-legal. We're going to get into that today. Of course, on the Legal Mindset, we teach you to be your own judge. I'm Andrew Esquire, American attorney, and I'm bringing you this Fast Facts premiere, a quick and dirty version, while I once again on...
Is he an attorney or not? I don't even know.
Short vacation in lovely Phuket, Thailand.
I guess he is.
Another hotel room, another place, but still bringing you the freshest news. So make sure you like this video.
He is?
If you
Okay.
like the Fast Facts
Well, then
version.
why would they say it's fake? Esquire means attorney? Oh, I thought it was like a French word, like esquier from like Expedition 33. I just thought it was like a made-up word. That's crazy. Okay.
So let's get right into it. Twitch has always taken a preferential stance when it comes to enforcing its guidelines, or at least when looking at its terms of service, has not always applied those equally to all groups and people. And one of the people that gets the most criticism
Everybody knows this. Everybody knows it. It's a fact.
This, and that many folks across the board have said is the really recipient of a lot of the benefit of the terms of service without the burden of punishment, has been one Hassan Piker. Now,
I actually think that Hassan is the most noteworthy case because he's really popular. But the fact is that other people do worse stuff than Hassan all the time, and they never get in trouble either. I think that really everybody thinks about Hassan because, again, that's what gets the most attention. But the fact is that, like, Mike from PA goes way harder than Hassan does. Really. Like, I mean, there's no universe where, like, I mean, Hassan does things that are unhinged, but even Hassan, I think, tries to at least pretend to not be crazy.
Now, today, there was an absolutely extreme incident which really points out the problem for Twitch in having this unequal enforcement involving Hassan, and how this can have legal consequences. And this is involving him swinging around what appears to be, and that's the very key here legally and overall, what appears to be a weapon. So let's take a look at the video. And of course, this is video that I found over on X. Which highlights this incident. So we'll take this clip here and give some commentary as we go.
It's time to crusade Iran and Gaza. Mamdani communists. Let's go to war against the left.
So so to give you some background here, it appears there's a chatter in his chat who is made a bunch of comments. Obviously, these are comments that are not fitting with the vibe in the crowd of.
I mean, to be fair, this chatter should be permed. Like they should have their account deleted. Like calling for war and to hang streamers, like they should have their account deleted. I mean, even if you don't like Hassan or you don't like Zoran Mandami, like you can't have people saying that shit, right?
Hassan's chat. Obviously, for any of this, he would have the ability to block and or ban this person. Of course, every single content creator retains the right to ban people out of their chat for whatever reason. Some people are more permissive, some people are more restrictive. That's really up to the creators on their platform. If they choose to ban people for anything, that's up to them. We wouldn't be here today if this was just a block and ban incident, which, once again, I think there was plenty of grounds for.
By the way, about Mandami's application to Colombia, he's actually from Uganda, so his application was accurate. So him being African-American, like African-American is a specific identity of black people that exist in America. Africans are not African-American. They are African. It is a specific identity of a group of people inside of the United States. He put that on his application in order to use it to get an advantage. He's not a stupid guy. This is a very intelligent, very well manicured, well presenting, intelligent person. He put that so it would increase his chances of getting accepted. Everybody knows it. Why are we playing games?
For him as a creator saying, hey, I don't want this person here.
He knew.
And some of this language was even pretty extreme, saying hang Hassan for treason. Yeah, that's pretty extreme. And you know what? Blocking and banning someone for that would be called for. If someone came into my chat or anybody else's chat and said that about that creator, they would probably catch a ban. They would probably catch a block and a ban, and possibly a report, a broader report. But the response that Hassan gives here is not proportional nor appropriate to these comments. Let's play this.
In our sincerity and actually delivering for the very working.
So let's be clear. He's gone and retrieved what appears to be a pistol. Now, many people have pointed out it could be airsoft.
Even the dog is on alert. The dog is like, oh, fuck.
Or it is airsoft or whatever else. The key here is that it appears to be a real weapon. I'll also note, as someone who played airsoft for like 8-9 years as a kid, I had MP5s, I had pistols, I had a sniper rifle, even an airsoft sniper rifle. You're supposed to have an orange tip or a marker on the end of an airsoft. That would be not a typical airsoft to lack that marker or remove that orange tip, even though, of course, some people do that. Some people make it more realistic.
Instantaneously, we did that.
But the key here, and this is a key that is not just in analyzing this for Twitch terms of service, but also broader for the law, is that you can make a physical threat. You can make a threat or try to intimidate somebody with even a fake weapon, with a fake knife, with a fake gun, with a fake bomb. If you were going to try to hijack a plane and you attempted that with a fake gun,
you get tried as if you were using
not be material in terms of your defense. You would not be able to say, oh, but well, it was fake, so I couldn't do it all along. You know, when you get caught and arrested and thrown in jail, you don't get off because, oh, it was fake. No, you would lead a reasonable person to believe that was.
Yeah, you don't need to be a lawyer to know this. Like, even I know this. How many of you guys already knew this?
Real, and a reasonable person could have fear of that knife, gun, bomb, whatever, I mean, despite the fact that it's not objectively real. So that's a defense a lot of people brought up, and I don't think that stands up. Let's continue here.
President Trump has been able to do. You know, over the same period of time that I've been running, has been tell him if the last person couldn't get my name right. That's what it's going to look like again.
Okay, fair enough.
Once again, brandishing the weapon, flaring it around. Obviously, there's a point to this. Obviously, there's an individual who this is directed at. You know, this is something that's not really ambiguous in the general intention.
As you may or
it's pretty obvious who's trying to threaten the guy. That's obviously what's going on. Everybody can see that. It's not even a question. I mean, and also I think it's, again, a very, very big mistake because, like, if you show a gun, that's going to hurt. Like, if you shoot somebody breaking into your house and they have clips of you showing a gun and that you're going to shoot people, they could use that as evidence that you premeditated it and you wanted to shoot them, which could make your appeal for self-defense weaker. So I think it was a mistake. It's a mistake to do that.
Oh, you found his account?
Today, I will show you 3 ways you can use your...
So here's another crazy thing about the doxing. So now you've paired, so you've linked up brandishing a weapon, what appears to be a real weapon, whether or not it is, whether it's an airsoft or whether it's fake.
Yeah.
You've paired up brandishing a weapon with doxing, which is revealing their private information, which, by the way, in certain jurisdictions, in certain places
California,
in the world,
I think, is one of
is
them.
illegal.
Yeah.
So you've done 2 things which are potentially illegal. There's the brandishing, the threats, the intimidation, and then you've got the doxing, right? So you've got 2 separate things you're now doing together. So that this is combining to make it even worse.
Not good at all.
This is the guy?
First thing we want to do is download the YouTube.
It's not the guy. It's not even the guy.
VPN app, which we can do through the first link in the description.
Fuck are you gonna do, bro?
And of course, I do like the pop-up there just explaining that this is clearly against their TOS. This is something that is not, you know, holistically, both the doxing and the threatening is, of course, against the Twitch terms of service, right?
Yeah.
Write a petition? Let's do a crusade, he says. Let's do a fucking crusade, he says. Let's hang Hassan and Mamdani for treason, he says. The fuck are you gonna do? Go on a fishing expedition? Try to fucking put malware in my phone? Is that what you're gonna do?
You don't have to have big muscles in order to pull the trigger of a gun. It's not like you have to work out in order to shoot a gun. That's the whole point of a gun. Like, I don't even, like, what, are they gonna beat each other up with a gun? I don't know. You're misinterpreting it. It's not a threat. He's just fucking stupid. I think that if you pulled out a gun like this in front of a police officer, you would be spending the night in jail or in the morgue. I think this is absolutely a threat. I think if somebody went to your house and they did this in front of your house, you'd be calling the police. That's the truth. And everybody knows it.
You skinny bitch.
And to be clear, nothing that Hassan said would be necessarily impermissible. He could say all those things. He could call them, I believe his technical word was a skinny bitch, all he wants. That would have been perfectly fine. He could yell.
It's actually not perfectly fine, because if Tectone can get banned for calling Frogan a fat bitch, then why is Hassan not getting banned for calling someone else a skinny bitch? What is this, fat privilege? That doesn't seem fair.
At this guy the whole night, scream at this guy the whole night. The problem was the weapon combined with the doxing, right? All the other stuff he could do. That's his show. He can run it how he wants. That wouldn't necessarily be against TOS to just yell at the guy the whole night and make fun of the guy. That's fine. Do it your way. Not what we do on my channel. But hey, he can do it on his channel all he wants. But with that, you open yourself up to a bunch of problems. And Twitch is opened up to a bunch of problems because now they've got to decide what they're going to do with Hassan. And in the past, they've only given him slaps on the wrist. That is, they've given him 1 day or 24-hour bans or sometimes 12-hour bans. And that's been all they've done with him. But now we've got a serious problem because we've got a situation in which if he is not banned for this, this opens up this behavior for others. So it opens up this behavior, these threats for other people, which can bring on what appears.
I think also it another thing. I don't know if he's going to talk about this or not. I mean, but my understanding is like I mean, Twitch obviously knows this happened, right? And if Twitch knowingly ignored this, and something bad happens in the future at Twitch, they could use this as evidence that there's a pattern of behavior that Twitch does not cull or, action problematic actors. You see what I'm saying? And like that can be used as like a precedent of irresponsibility, negligence, or something like that. They have to do something. You're wrong on that? Well, okay, so I can draw a parallel, okay? And this is the only thing I can do as a good argument. And again, like maybe he could, elaborate on this more than I could. But like, for example, for any sort of, child sexual abuse material or copyright material, the problem is not that the content is on the platform. The problem only exists with liability towards the company if the company knows the content is on the platform and they permit it to be on the platform. So they're not proactively accountable, but if there's evidence that they knew about it and they let it happen, then they are accountable. And that's part of Section 230 that removes liability. It's called precedence. Yes, and so that's my bet. That's where I'm drawing this connection from. And it also creates a history of behavior. I mean, it's pretty simple, right? I mean, if somebody has a history of behavior, then you can assume that it wasn't just an accident, right? Clearly.
To be real weapons, knives, bombs, and dox people, threaten them. And here's the problem for Twitch. They open themselves up for not just losing advertisers, which is a big non-legal issue, not just looking bad as a brand, because obviously nobody wants to be the platform in which people are openly brandishing weapons and threatening others and doxing them. That's not good for a platform. But you open yourself up to illegal consequences as well. Now, obviously, many people know the breach of contract route. And there are arguments in terms of breaching the contract between the creator and the platform in terms of banning somebody for one type of behavior, whereas you don't ban somebody for another. So you don't ban Hassan for this, but let's say another creator is banned for this. Well, there might be a cause of action open up there. Now, there's a lot of challenges with that. That's a difficult one. But one that's even more interesting and one that is really untested, and in fact, there may be many people looking to test this, is a consumer type action under a private right of action. Every state has their consumer laws, and those laws are sometimes very, very strong. And one thing they protect against is unfair and deceptive practices. And it indeed is a very strong case to say it is an unfair and deceptive practice to benefit some people while punishing others. Because this bias, for example, Hassan bias, is not disclosed anywhere. It's not given out in the terms of service. When you read the terms of service, nowhere does it say.
I don't think that they can really have that bias happen and be held accountable for it unless it can be proven that it's done off of grounds that were protected groups. And this is, again, I'm not sure about this, but that's my understanding, is that like you can ban people for whatever reason you want, but there are certain groups of people that you can't ban categorically for discrimination reasons. So like, for example, you can't ban black people from doing something, but you can ban other groups of people, like all Republicans, for example, because some things are protected groups and other things are not protected groups. So I think that's my understanding, but I could be wrong.
Everyone will be punished except for Hassan Piker. Everyone will be banned except for Hassan Piker. Or For example, if you want to be more broad, everyone will be banned except people who share Hassan Piker's political beliefs or affiliations or associations. If that was disclosed publicly, then fair dues, then you can do what you're trying to do. Of course, advertisers may have an issue with that, but legally it wouldn't be as deceptive. Yeah. But now you're deceiving the consumer, both the people that are consuming the content, that are expecting that their favorite content creators will not be banned, and then seeing them get banned, and deceiving the creators themselves by lulling them into a belief that they can stream on your platform safely and do what they want, just like Hassan.
I think the big problem is that a lot of companies want to have the privileges of Section 230 that allows them immunity from accountability from their behavior. So they want the privileges of a platform, but the power of a publisher. And I think that the more companies start applying these terms of service like rules arbitrarily, and they're not applying them in an even way, I think that really this is a privilege that the government gives these websites and these companies. And in turn, I think these companies should be acting in good faith. And if these companies are not acting in good faith and they're not doing the thing that the privilege is designed to allow them to do, or not do in this case, which is preemptively censor and audit all content, and that's, again, because they're not a publisher, they're not publishing it themselves, they're just a platform for other people to publish on it. If you are applying this much editorial control to a website, at what point do you effectively become a publisher? Right? It's the second that happens, right-leaning websites or media get censored out of existence due to liability of removing or restricting Section 230. Well, I don't have a problem with that at all, with companies that are actively applying it one-dimensionally.
But then they're ultimately punished. And they're punished for a much longer period of time. They're losing a much larger slice of revenue, memberships, subscriptions, etc., affiliate deals than Hassan. So you're able to point to that and say, I have damages because I am being banned for 7x, 10x, 30x, way longer than Hassan. And I can bring this private cause of action for an unfair and deceptive practice on the part of Twitch. And there's a lot of folks that may be opened up for that. So looking at this,
I think that especially with how, like, and this was the really bad one was the Arab to Jew tier list that they did. That's the one that I think is really going to get them in a bad situation. Is that if they're banning and applying rules to people based off of perceived ethnic differences, if that can be proven in court, Twitch is actually fucked. The Sabra tier list, yeah, it is. It should be a perma. That was crazy. It was. And also, like, another thing, too, is that I don't think that the tier list is a problem. Like, but, and this is kind of like, this is what the issue is that it's the systematic allowance of one type of racism while other types of racism are being banned. And I think that's really where the problem is more than anything. Because, like, on YouTube, for example, or on Kick or Rumble, you can say a lot of different crazy stuff. But Twitch has a much more narrow terms of service, and a lot more things that would be against the rules on other platforms are, or would not be against the rules, are against the rules on Twitch. So really the problem isn't that it's happening. The problem is that it's happening and it's being regulated in a one-dimensional way. Israeli accounts are banned from opening accounts by IP. Yeah, like there's a lot of evidence, I think, and not, yeah, there's a lot of evidence that points towards the direction that Twitch has had a bias that is detrimental to Jewish people. I would say so. I think criticism and negative treatment towards Jewish people has been allowed to exist much more than the opposite. I think also you have creators that, you know, with that tier list that got a 30-day ban and that was it. And I don't know. I mean, like, it's very hard to prove something like that in court. That's a very big accusation. But I think that they would have a number of points of reference, and especially with, you know, like the logic of, like, Twitch, for example, if Twitch said, well, we banned the IP addresses after October 7th from Israel and Palestine because of the war, that would be immediately deleted when you look at the fact that Ukraine wasn't banned. It would just be instantaneously gone. So, like, that argument doesn't exist. And I think that, again, like, yeah, the logic's off. Yeah, of course, it's totally off. And same with Russia, exactly.
Big problem, and would be even a bigger problem if there was a real incident where somebody got into an altercation where there was a threat made like Hassan, and then somebody responded with force. We saw the case of Sin City Manny in Las Vegas, the streamer that responded to taunting and threats of other streamers. People are not beyond responding with violence, particularly in America.
Especially not
that
now.
is something in 2025. That's
Very
something that
common.
could happen, and God forbid that do happen, would be the absolute end of Twitch as a platform. What do I see them doing? They've got to do something against Hassan. Hopefully they give him a longer term ban, more than just 24 hours. But unfortunately, Twitch has been known to be very light on its favorite golden boy. But let me know in the comments below what you think about the whole situation, and what do you think they're going to do with Hassan, if they're going to do anything, and I'll catch you on the next.
Yeah, I mean, I would say it puts Twitch in a very compromising position to allow that to happen. I think it really, really does. It puts them in a very, very bad position. And I think also, like, there's just been, the issue is that there have been so many instances here. Give it a like. I haven't watched the legal mindset video all the way in general, right? But yeah, there it is. And I don't believe that you have turned off Israel and Ukraine because they learned they made a mistake with Ukraine. I don't believe it, but it's possible. Well, no, because then they didn't turn off. Did they turn it off with India and Pakistan? No, they didn't. So if they only applied this rule one-dimensionally for Israeli accounts, and also you've got to keep in mind that, what do you think the probability is that there have been anti-Semitic communications in channels that could be subpoenaed and found through discovery on Twitch's actual service, especially with individual people that are communicating between each other? I think there's a very high probability that that would happen. A very good chance, yes. And so I think that, again, if this goes to court, and I'm guessing, right? I'm not sure about this, but I think that there's a very high probability.